My name is Kanahus Manuel. It means red woman in Tanaka. I'm also from the Kanahus Nation from my mother's side, which is also in so-called British Columbia. Our area in so-called British Columbia is here on this map. You can see the shaded in area. That's our nation. We call this our nation Secwpemc. It's one of the biggest territories in so-called British Columbia. If you could imagine, this land base of BC is the size of Washington, Oregon, and California states combined. So it's a vast area. It's an area that has never been ceded or surrendered by my people. There has been no treaties or purchased by Canada, and so this land remains ours. And this is our big fight up in the north right now. And it's not that far. Drive north, but it's an area that a lot of people don't really know about of what's happening up there, and our people still at war. That's how we feel. There's our ancestors that came before us that defended this land, defended our territory so we can be here. They left a legacy. There's Malcolm X. I wear a shirt of him today to show our alliance with all resistance. And there's Crazy Horse and Tecumseh and all these warriors out there that created a legacy for us to stand on as people, that puts our level of where we should be fighting. It brings our standards up, and we need warriors to stand on the front lines. We're battling with many different industries right now in our homelands. Mining and pipelines are bombarding our homelands, and Native people are feeling like we're being backed into the corner, but we're like mother bears. When you back us too much in the corner and you threaten the future of our children, we're going to fight back and we're going to attack. And that's the mentality that we have right now. The women have said it's a state of emergency in our homelands, and it's the women that are standing up on the front lines, and it's the women warriors that are leading the way for our people. And it's really important to note that, because I go in other places in society and it's always a man's world, but when you come into our world, you'll see things in a different light, because it's the women that are leading the way. I'd like to start my talk off with a little short video. It's of the Mt Polley disaster, which is Imperial Metals mine that dumped millions and hundreds of millions of toxic waste from their mining tailings facility and dumped it into our freshwater lakes and rivers. Dumped it into the second largest sockeye salmon spawning grounds in the world, where our nation is also home to those two largest sockeye salmon spawning grounds. We have many headwaters that start in our territory and feed the land and the water and the animals all the way down into the ocean. So this video is 3 months after the disaster, and we went into the disaster site so we can document that they were not doing any cleanup. And this is sort of gives an idea of like the size of this disaster that we're dealing with. We had to go and see for ourselves. Like Imperial Metals has been covering this disaster up from the very beginning. They weren't giving the truth out to the public or to our people, to our Secwpemc people, about what really happened on that day. And now, almost 3 months later, we had to go in there so we could see for our own eyes what they were doing. And we had to bring the truth back to the people. Arriving at the site of the supposed cleanup or cover-up, there were workers all there, and they confronted us. They wanted us to leave.
Are you deaf?
No, I just don't care what you're saying.
Well, it doesn't matter. You gotta go. Let's go now.
They all left. They all left the site. We can see here on these big cedar trees how far the mining waste, all this sludge had come down during the initial spill, and how high it was when it came through. And to us, it looks like a big cover-up and not a cleanup. We don't see no tailings waste getting hauled off. There's no big heavy haulers hauling any of these mining wastes out of here. They just have these big piles of rocks, and to us, It looks like they're just covering it up. The water that is still flowing into Quesnel Lake, it's actually mining wastes that's continuing to flow. And all that mercury and cyanide and arsenic and all those heavy metals and processing chemicals, it's leaching. After just being there and just seeing the color of the gray, like no life, and you can't replicate that color anywhere in nature, it's like lifeless. I'm standing here at what used to be Hazeltine Creek. We're in Secwpemc Nation. It's our traditional Secwpemc place name for this area. This creek, it used to be 4 feet wide. Some people said you could just jump over it at some point, and now it's just a big, vast gash and gorge and scar onto our land here. And then Imperial said that these Secwpemc were ready to talk to us. It was people that were hired by the band, and it's important for people to know that the chief and council, that band office system, was invented and put in place by the Canadian government. So government and industry, they use that in order to get consent to push through with these projects, these mining projects and pipeline projects. But the people on the ground, the people that depend on the land, that are impacted by things like this disaster or mining going through, or pipelines, the people that hunt, the berry pickers and the fishermen, we are the ones that really inevitably are first impacted. And so we are the first ones to be able to make the choice on what happens on our territory. Consent for these companies needs to come from the rightful title holders, needs to come from the people. Our collective nation consensus amongst the whole entire nation, not band council systems. So right now we're almost 8 months after the disaster, and there's still nothing happening. There's no meaningful cleanup that has been taking place, and all of the waste are continuing to flow into Quesnel Lake, which is the deepest glacier lake in the world. Where territory is home to a rare inland temperate rainforest. This is our war that's happening on our homelands right now, and this is the battle that our people are facing off with. And it's a different type of battle, and it's real covert, and they're using industry, and they're using mining, and they're trying to take the last of our remaining resources from our territory. And we need people out in the world to know that this is happening, that Canada is occupying our homelands, and that we need support as well, and it's just right there, and people need to know that we've never sold our land out, we've never signed treaties, and that this still continues to exist in this world. I was told the other day when someone watched this film that could be any road. That could be any road here in this homelands. Driving in, you're going to bump up into industry that's impacting Indigenous people. Wherever you go, you're going to find that. Whether you go way up north, you're going to go and you're going to drive on any back road, and you're going to find that people are trapping in their snowmobiles and driving up, and they're finding uranium companies and exploration where people don't know what to do, so we blockade. And that's where our people are at, is they'll blockade as the last resort. And when we blockade, then the Canadian government and the court system will throw an injunction and enforcement order and enforce arrests on our people. And a lot of times it's elders, and a lot of times it's mothers, and a lot of times it's youth, young people that are being arrested and jailed and in prison. When they introduced me, they talked about the Sun Peak Ski Resort. The Sun Peak Ski Resort was a real push to get started before the 2010 Winter Olympics. And some people may say, oh, ski resort, how does that impact a nation? Well, because it kills off our moose, it kills off our access to our territories that we collect our food and our livelihood from, our watershed, where we get our clean water. And Sun Peak Ski Resort is responsible for arresting over 75 of our elders, women, and children in less than a 1-year period. Sun Peak Ski Resort and the British Columbia government is responsible for bulldozing down 2 homes and destroying 2 Secwpemc traditional homes, 2 sweat lodges, a man's and a woman's sweat lodges, desecrating eagle feathers and ceremonial grounds. This is what the Canadian government in the province of British Columbia and these industries are all collaborating. And when we're talking about decolonization as Indigenous people, what does that mean to decolonize, to go back to our traditional ways of living and existing? And so that's what Native Youth Movement was really powerful in our communities, is because it start talking and the young people start talking and saying, what are we going to do? Not just stand on the front lines and fight against industry, but we have to fight to bring back our way of life, fight to bring back our traditional ways of giving birth, fight to bring back our traditional clothing and what we eat. And that all comes from defending our homelands, because our whole culture is based off of land. And it's land and freedom together. We can't have one without the other. And we're reaching out to everybody at this point. I don't know how much time I have left on I have like some other pictures, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the Mt Polley disaster and how our people at the time of the disaster went out to the mine site. And we set up a encampment and we lit a sacred fire for 14 days out at the mine site. And we had people coming from all over to come to this, different nations, Indigenous nations that are impacted by the water. Our salmon were connected through the salmon and the water. Other nations came, people from all over Secwpemc Nation, likely residents from the local town that have been impacted, workers and whistleblowers and ex-Mt Polley workers, all came to give their testimonies at that fire, and that fire was powerful. It brought people together to shed tears for what really happened, because everybody is so connected to the salmon. We had a marine biologist come by and tell us how the DNA of the salmon are actually in the DNA of the trees from thousands and thousands of years of the grizzlies and the bears bringing those salmon up onto the stream and eating the humps and the choice parts and then leaving the rest for the eagles and to decompose into the earth. And that's what our people say, that the DNA of that salmon flows through our blood too, because we've been eating salmon for so long. And you look at the trauma that this has brought upon our people when we think of, like, what does that mean? Are we going to be able to eat salmon in the future? And women cried and men cried at the fish rocks, seeing that footage of this sludge coming down. And we need people to always look at those images and be reminded when they're in their homes or on the reserve or in the cities, and they forget about that footage of, like, how that spill looks. Because they don't want to just do it there. They want to do it there and there and there and all throughout our homelands, and they want to make us toxic. The first time I went to the spill site, I got sucked into that sludge because it was so unstable, up to my knees. And other women were crying, and it made me realize that at that point that's what they want to do, is they want to make every single one of our people toxic. And so I just want to mention too, I think that's my daughter crying in the background. But she's here, and I have my 2 children here. They're my freedom babies. I never registered my children with the Canadian government. They don't have a birth certificate with the government. How I believe is because I have to tell a little story for you to sort of get an idea of why I feel like this. After in Sun Peak Ski Resort, the Canadian government arrested me and put me in jail for 3 months. My baby was just 3 months old when they put me in jail, and they never let me out. They denied me bail. They knew I was a nursing mother, and they put me in jail. And I had to really think. You know, I was there in jail, still trying to get out, and they wouldn't let me out. And I knew I wasn't going to register my kids from the beginning because I saw what they did. I saw that they didn't care about us. I saw that they bulldozed down our homes. I saw my family crying, my grandmother standing on the front lines getting arrested, witnessing my aunties and my mothers being shackled by their wrists and their ankles to me. You know, my mom was in between me and my twin sister shackled, and had to think, like, how did this come to be where our Indian people can't even go out onto our homelands in Canada? This is the way they want to treat us. And I was like, why am I going to sign a birth certificate over and say, oh, here, Canada. Yeah, they recognize my children. No, I wasn't going to do that. I never gave them a status card either, and there's groups of women in our territory that are doing the same thing, and that's what we talk about, decolonization. And so that's the stance that a lot have been taking. There's also our different projects that we're working on. So we're not just talking about these problems that we're facing in our homelands, because we've been bombarded with these issues and problems of colonization since white men set foot in our territory. But we're coming together as young people to form real strong, innovative projects that are really going to help with the decolonization of our nations, including reoccupying our territories and building out on our homelands, building our own traditional underground pit houses and reestablishing that after 100 years of not living in them. We're working on projects of food security with my grandfather Wolverine. He says you can't have a revolution without being able to feed the people, that the way that society controls us is through our bellies. And so we're working on that, supporting other camps, also language and revitalization, culture revitalization, and media training projects, so we could get it was young people that worked on this film, and they just put it out really fast, and that's what we're working out, to get the information out there like that. So through Native Youth Movement, the Secwpemc Women's Warrior Society, we're really trying to empower the young people to stand up and take part in our movements, and to connect our movements like here tonight. I'm also asking too, because we are grassroots people organizing, that we have a donation jar or donation something, and one of the helpers there are going to pass a jar around. This will go to some of the projects that we are working on. And right now we're en route to Liberation Days. It's in Wounded Knee, South Dakota, and it's an anniversary for the uprising and for the massacre that happened there in Wounded Knee. So we're going to go meet up with them, the warriors there, and Native Youth Movement there, and show our solidarity with them. So that's where we're heading out to. And it's really important for everybody to show solidarity with whatever is happening here. Also, in these homelands here, we could support struggles everywhere else, you know, Secwpemc territory everywhere, but it's really important where we're living right now and what territory that everybody's occupying right now. And I'm not even sure, and I feel bad for not being able to say it right now, but I would like to know, like, what nation this is, so everybody could know what territory it is right now where we're on. Okay, that's the Confederated Tribes, Umatilla, Grand Ronde, Fort Bridge, Warm Springs, Celeste, and Hitamachek or something. That's like, this is a big, powerful area then, if it's a big area where all these nations meet. So this is a powerful area, and we all have to be able to consciously always know what territory we're on and where we're living, and pay respect to these homelands here, because people died for these lands and fought for these lands. So-called British Columbia announced that they recognized that it was unceded, unsurrendered Coast Salish territories, and yeah, it's good and nice that they're saying that, but the government and the occupying government is not recognizing it on the ground. Like, they say that Aboriginal title and rights exist, and it's reaffirmed even in the Canadian Constitution, yet on the ground they're still pushing the BC Treaty process, which is a process between civil servants, the chief and council system, and the civil servants of the government. So two civil servants working for the same department signing a treaty to take more land, and that's what's happening with the BC treaty process up there. So yeah, they're announcing it, and it's like Omar said, like the master and slave relationship, and the oppressor and the oppressed. Yeah, they could recognize and they could say that, but it doesn't really mean anything on the ground. We need people to take real concrete actions into recognizing that, and to even giving their land back that they have under fee simple. And also the decolonization. We do a lot of decolonization work in our community. We do a lot of decolonization work with the Native youth movement, with the young people. One of our main mottos is raising warriors, because all of us are raising our children now. So we're raising them in families that are really trying to reclaim back our traditional ways, spending many months out in the homelands collecting food, collecting salmon, smoking salmon, hunting, drying all of our meat, preparing and putting a lot of food away is one of the biggest things. My grandfather is here. He says it's really important that we start to put our caches away in our food, and even warm blankets and gear, because the time is going to come when this system is going to fail. It's my first opening into this BDS and the divestment movements, but when I first heard that, I'm just like, well, let's just all divest ourselves out of the system and just not even, put any power into it. The other question about the women, and I really, there's a lot of women here, and I really want to honor all the women. They're the ones that give birth to our nation, and that's where the decolonization is going to come from. It's going to come from conception. It's going to come in the womb, all the way through our being raised by our mothers. They're the ones that raise us. They're the ones that raise our warriors and our powerful nations. They're the ones that teach our sons and our daughters. So, yeah, it's women are going to have to really step up the pace and really lead the way for our people, because we've left it up to the men for too long. So